There is biblical evidence that supports the idea that the dragon of the Exodus was defeated by lightning or an electrical discharge. The psalmist declared that the Lord broke Rahab in pieces. Rahab was killed as one slain on a battlefield. This suggests he was killed by an arrow, sword, or spear as in ancient combat. Isaiah said that Rahab was cut, which alludes to the use of a sharp piercing weapon, such as a sword or spear. The prophet also indicated that the dragon was wounded by a piercing weapon. The Hebrew original, translated in the King James Version as wounded, means to pierce. Other translations are more literal and retain the piercing nature of the wound. Isaiah used the same root to describe the Savior's being pierced by a spear on the cross. The Lord's sword or spear, of course, was the thunderbolt. The Lord held the sword or spear that cut or pierced the dragon with his arm. Scriptural accounts describe his arm as a weapon itself. Isaiah called upon the arm of the Lord to show its mighty strength as it did in the ancient days, a reference to the Exodus. The Lord's arm was an instrument of deliverance and judgment. It was the Lord's arm that broke the dragon in pieces and scattered Israel's enemies. Like the sword and spear, the arm was a thunderbolt. With it came devouring fire, tempest, and hailstones. The strong arm of the Lord was stretched out in the heavens, and with its hand caused the great terrors of the Exodus. The hand itself was also stretched forth and redeemed Israel from the bondage of Egypt. The outstretched arm and hand were not a temporary flash like lightning. It persisted in the heavens. The Lord promised Jeremiah that he would use his outstretched hand and strong arm in the prophet's time. The Lord's holy arm was visible to the nations of the entire world. One of the nations of the ancient world that knew of the arm and hand of the Lord was Egypt. The heavenly arm was included in Egypt's hieroglyphic writing system. The single outstretched arm denoted action. As far as historical linguists can ascertain, hieroglyphics developed hundreds of years before the Exodus. This means that the arm of the Lord, upon which the outstretched arm glyph was based, was present in the heavens well before the Exodus. One Egyptian hieroglyph was an outstretched arm holding a stick. The name of the glyph is arm with the power stick. The stick has been called a baton, mace, or scepter. The glyph is entirely consistent with Moses and Aaron stretching forth their hands with the rod of God to enact the plagues upon Egypt. Moses and Aaron stretching forth of their hands and arms with the rod in power was a ritual performance in imitation of the outstretched arm and hand in heaven. The ordinance called forth the power of the heavenly arm of the Lord. Another example of a ritual performance of the outstretched arm occurred in the battle with Amalek. In this case, with the help of Aaron and Hur, Moses extended his hand with the rod to heaven. When fully outstretched, the power of the arm and rod of Moses ensured victory over Amalek.